The bullet grazed her shoulder before she even heard the shot, and Zara Thompson knew it was her own father pulling the trigger from the second-floor window of their ranch house. She hit the dirt hard, rolling behind the water trough as another round splintered the wood above her head. The horses in the corral screamed and scattered, their hooves thundering against the packed earth of the yard. It was August 1878 in Linden, Kansas, and the heat shimmered off the ground in waves that made the whole world look like it was melting. Blood seeped through her sleeve, warm and sticky, but she had felt worse pain than this. The physical wounds always healed faster than the other kind. "You get back here, girl." Her father's voice was slurred with whiskey, the same poison that had been eating him alive for the past decade. "You think you can just walk away from your responsibilities? You owe me." Zara pressed herself against the rough wood of the trough, her breath coming hard. She had turned 23 last month, and every year of her life felt like a century. The carpetbag with all her worldly possessions was still clutched in her left hand. She had waited until he passed out in his chair before trying to leave, but Henry Thompson had developed an uncanny sense for when his daughter was attempting to escape. "I don't owe you anything," she shouted back, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "You drank away everything Mama left us. You gambled away the cattle. I have kept this place running for 5 years with my own sweat and blood, and you have done nothing but destroy it." Another shot rang out, this one going wide. He was too drunk for accuracy. Thank God. Zara took the opportunity to sprint for the fence line, pumping her legs as hard as they would go. Her long, dark hair had come loose from its braid and whipped behind her like a banner. She could hear him cursing from the window, the wet cough that followed telling her his lungs were as rotten as his soul. She cleared the fence and kept running, down the dirt road that led to town, 3 miles of open prairie between her and any kind of civilization. The sun beat down merciless and bright, and her shoulder throbbed with each footfall, but she did not stop. She had tried to leave before. Twice, men had offered to help her, to take her away from the ranch and her father's cruelty. Both times she had sabotaged it herself, picking fights, saying cruel things, pushing them away before they could see how broken she really was. It was easier to be alone than to watch someone realize she was not worth the trouble. The third man had been different. He had seemed kind, patient, willing to wait for her to trust him. So she had trusted him with the truth about her father's debts, about the men who came around looking for payment, about the way Henry had promised her hand in marriage to settle his gambling accounts. That man had left before dawn, taking 2 of their best horses and her mother's silver jewelry. She had given him every reason to stay, and he had found his own reason to leave. After that, Zara had learned. She became sharp-tongued and difficult, cold and distant. She made sure every man who looked at her twice saw the worst parts of her first. She picked fights over nothing, criticized everything, and kept her heart locked up so tight sometimes she forgot it was still beating. It was better that way, safer. If they left because she drove them away, at least she had some control over the abandonment. The town of Linden sprawled ahead of her, a collection of wooden buildings baking in the Kansas heat. The main street was busy with afternoon traffic, wagons rolling past, people going about their business. Zara slowed to a walk, trying to catch her breath, trying to look like she had not just been shot at by her own blood. She pressed her hand against her shoulder and felt the warm wetness there. The bullet had only grazed her, but it was bleeding freely. She needed a doctor, but Dr. Morrison would ask questions. He would want to know what happened, and then the sheriff would get involved, and Henry would spin some story about her being hysterical, about her trying to steal from him. Her father had a talent for making himself the victim. So instead, she made her way to the back of the general store, where there was a pump and a horse trough. She could clean the wound herself, bandage it with strips from her petticoat. The alley was blessedly shaded, a narrow gap between the store and the feed supplier. Zara set down her carpetbag and worked the pump handle until cold water gushed out. She cupped her hands under it and drank deep, then splashed her face. When she peeled back her sleeve to examine the wound, she hissed through her teeth. The bullet had carved a furrow through the meat of her shoulder, ugly and ragged but not deep enough to be truly dangerous. That looks like it hurts. Zara spun around, her hand instinctively going to the small knife she kept in her boot. A man stood at the entrance to the alley, backlit by the bright street beyond. He was tall and lean, wearing dust-covered trail clothes and a hat pulled low over his eyes. She could not see his face clearly, but something in his posture suggested he was not looking for trouble. "It is none of your concern," she said sharply, her fingers closing around the knife handle. "Move along." The man did not move. Instead, he took a step closer, and the shadows shifted enough for her to see him properly. He had a weathered face, tan from years under the sun, with a strong jaw and eyes the color of creek water, somewhere between green and brown. He looked to be in his mid-20s, maybe 26 or 27. There was a gentleness in his expression that immediately made her suspicious. "You are bleeding pretty good there," he said, his voice low and calm. "Bullet wound, if I am seeing right. You should get that looked at proper." "I said it is none of your concern." Zara turned back to the pump, hoping he would take the hint. "I can manage." "I am sure you can," he said, and to her annoyance she heard him step closer. "But just because you can does not mean you should have to." She whirled on him, pulling the knife free and holding it between them. "I do not know you, and I do not want your help. I have had my fill of men who think they can fix me or save me or whatever hero nonsense is going through your head, so do us both a favor and walk away." The man raised his hand slowly, showing he was unarmed. His eyes never left hers. "My name is Zachary Reeves," he said. "I am not looking to fix or save anybody. I am just a cowboy passing through town, and I happen to see a woman who looks like she has had a rough day. If you want me to leave, I will leave. But I have some experience with wounds like that, and I have clean bandages in my saddlebag. Your choice." Zara studied him, searching for the angle, the trick, the hidden motive. Men like this did not help women like her without expecting something in return. But her shoulder was throbbing worse now, and she could feel herself getting lightheaded from blood loss and the heat. She hated needing help. Hated it with every fiber of her being. But she hated dying in an alley even more. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth, lowering the knife but not putting it away. "But if you try anything, I will gut you." Zachary's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Noted." He disappeared back toward the street and returned a moment later with a worn leather saddlebag. He moved slowly, deliberately, keeping his movements visible and predictable. When he knelt beside her, he kept a respectful distance. "This is going to sting," he warned, pulling out a bottle of whiskey. "Just get on with it." He poured the alcohol over the wound, and Zara bit down on her lip hard enough to taste copper. The pain was white-hot and immediate, but she did not make a sound. She had learned a long time ago not to show weakness. Zachary worked efficiently, cleaning the wound with strips of clean cloth, then wrapping it with proper bandages. His hands were steady and gentle, careful not to hurt her more than necessary. "You are good at this," she said, hating how suspicious she sounded. "Spent time working cattle drives," he replied, not looking up from his work. "You learn to patch up injuries when you are days away from the nearest town. There, that should hold. You will want to change the bandage tomorrow. Keep it clean." He sat back on his heels, giving her space. Zara pulled her sleeve back down, suddenly aware of how close they were in the narrow alley. She could smell horse and leather and something clean like soap. It had been a long time since a man had been this close to her without malice. "Thank you," she forced herself to say. The words felt rusty, like she had forgotten how to be gracious. "You are welcome." Zachary stood and offered her his hand. She ignored it, pushing herself up on her own. He did not seem offended. "You have somewhere safe to go. I will figure it out." "That is not an answer." Zara snatched up her carpetbag and faced him squarely. "Look, I appreciate the help with the bandage, but I do not need you worrying about me. I have been taking care of myself for a long time." "I do not doubt it," Zachary said, "but taking care of yourself and being in danger are two different things. Whoever shot you might come looking." She laughed, a bitter sound. "He is too drunk to find his own boots, let alone track me down." "But even if he does, that is my problem, not yours. You have done your good deed for the day. Your conscience is clear. Now go." She pushed past him and headed for the street, her shoulders screaming with each movement. She made it about 10 steps before the world tilted sideways. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground, and she found herself being supported by Zachary's solid presence. "Easy there," he said. "You have lost more blood than you think." "I am fine," she insisted, even as her legs refused to support her weight. "Sure you are." There was no mockery in his voice, just matter-of-fact observation. "The boarding house is just up the street. Miss Hadley runs a clean establishment. Let me get you a room." "I do not have money for a room." The admission burned her throat. "I barely have money for anything." Zachary adjusted his grip on her, taking most of her weight. "Then it is a good thing I just got paid from 3 months of work. Come on. We can argue about it later when you are not about to pass out in the street." Zara wanted to fight him, wanted to push him away and prove she did not need anyone. But her body had other ideas. The world was graying at the edges, and she could not feel her feet anymore. So she let him half carry her up the street, hating every second of it, hating the pitying looks from the townspeople, hating that she had been reduced to this. The boarding house was a neat 2-story building with white curtains in the windows and a sign that read Hadley House in careful script. Zachary maneuvered her up the steps and through the door, where a plump woman with graying hair looked up from her desk. "Zachary Reeves," she said, her face brightening. "I heard you were back in town. Who is your friend?" "This is Miss Thompson," Zachary said smoothly. "She has had an accident and needs a room, somewhere quiet where she can rest." Miss Hadley's sharp eyes took in the blood on Zara's sleeve, the pallor of her face, but she did not ask questions. "Room 3, top of the stairs, clean sheets and a water basin. Will she be needing a doctor?" "No doctor," Zara managed to say. "Just rest." Miss Hadley nodded and handed Zachary a key. "I will bring up some broth later. You look like you have not eaten in a week, girl." Zachary guided Zara up the narrow staircase, her feet barely cooperating. The room was small but clean, with a single bed covered in a faded quilt, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the back garden. He helped her to the bed and she collapsed onto it, her entire body trembling with exhaustion. "I will pay you back," she said, the words slurring together. "Every cent. We will talk about it later." Zachary pulled a thin blanket over her. "Right now you need to sleep." Zara wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her armor of hostility and suspicion, but she was so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of running, tired of being alone. Her eyes drifted closed against her will. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. There was a long pause. Then Zachary's voice, quiet and honest. "I do not know, I just am." When Zara woke, the room was dark and her mouth tasted like dust. Her shoulder throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, but the sharp pain had faded. She sat up slowly, her head swimming, and realized someone had removed her boots and draped a heavier blanket over her. On the washstand, There was a covered bowl that smelled of chicken broth and a glass of water. She drank the water first, gulping it down so fast she nearly choked. Then she tackled the broth, which was cold but delicious. She could not remember the last time she had eaten anything that was not stale bread or beans. When the bowl was empty, she stood and tested her legs. They held, though she felt shaky. The moon was bright outside the window, casting silver light across the garden. By her estimation, she had slept for about 6 hours. It was probably close to midnight. She should leave now, slip out before Zachary came back expecting gratitude or payment or whatever it was men like him wanted. The pattern was familiar. Accept help, get trapped, get hurt. Better to run now while she still could, but when she picked up her carpet bag, something made her hesitate. Zachary had not asked for anything, had not tried anything while she was vulnerable, had paid for a room and left her alone to rest. It was so foreign to her experience that she did not know what to make of it. A soft knock at the door made her jump. "Miss Thompson, it is Miss Hadley. I saw your light was on and thought you might like some fresh water." Zara opened the door a crack. The older woman stood there with a pitcher and a sympathetic smile. "How are you feeling, dear?" "Better. Thank you for the broth." "Oh, that was not from me. That was Zachary. He brought it up around supper time, but you were sleeping so soundly I did not want to wake you." Miss Hadley set the pitcher on the washstand. "He is a good man, that one. Known him since he was a boy. His family used to have a ranch north of here before the hard times hit." "I do not need his charity," Zara said stiffly. Miss Hadley gave her a knowing look. "Sometimes accepting help is not about charity, dear. Sometimes it is just about one person seeing another person in need and doing what they can. There is no shame in that." After Miss Hadley left, Zara sat on the edge of the bed and tried to sort through her tangled thoughts. She had spent so long pushing people away, building walls, making herself unlovable. It had become second nature. But what if this time was different? What if Zachary really was just helping with no expectation of return? The thought terrified her more than her father's bullets. She spent a restless night in the unfamiliar bed, waking at every creak and footstep. When dawn light finally crept through the window, she felt more tired than when she had gone to sleep. She changed the bandage on her shoulder, using the supplies Zachary had left, and was relieved to see the wound looked clean, no sign of infection. Then she dressed in her other set of clothes, a simple brown skirt and white blouse, both worn but clean. She made her way downstairs, intending to ask Miss Hadley about work. She needed to earn money, needed to pay back her debt and get out of town before her father sobered up enough to come looking for her. The dining room was empty except for one person sitting at the table near the window, drinking coffee and reading a newspaper. Zachary looked up when she entered and something in his face lightened. "Morning. How are you feeling?" "Fine." She stayed near the doorway, maintaining her distance. "I need to talk to you about payment." He folded the newspaper and gestured to the chair across from him. "Have some breakfast first. Miss Hadley makes excellent flapjacks. I am not hungry." "Yes, you are. Sit down." There was no command in his voice, just a simple statement of fact. And damn him, he was right. She was starving, so she sat, keeping her spine straight and her expression neutral. Miss Hadley appeared moments later with a plate piled high with flapjacks, bacon, and eggs. The smell alone made Zara's stomach cramp with hunger. She ate in silence, very aware of Zachary watching her. Not in a leering way, just observing. When she had cleaned her plate, he poured her a cup of coffee from the pot on the table. "The room is paid for a week," he said. "That should give you time to heal and figure out your next move." "A week?" Zara set down her fork. "I cannot accept that. I will work to pay off the debt." "What kind of work were you thinking?" "I can do anything. I have run a ranch for 5 years. I can handle horses, mend fences, work cattle. I am strong and I am not afraid of hard labor." Zachary nodded slowly. "I believe you. But that gunshot wound is going to slow you down for at least a few days. You need time to heal." "I do not have time," Zara said, her frustration spilling over. "Every day I stay here is another day he could find me. Every cent I owe you is another chain keeping me trapped. I need to pay my debts and move on." "Where will you go?" The question stopped her. She had not thought that far ahead. Away had been the only plan, the only goal. "West, maybe, Colorado. I heard there are opportunities there." "There are opportunities here too," Zachary said. "The Carlson Ranch is always looking for hands. I am working there myself, breaking horses. I could put in a word for you." Zara studied him over the rim of her coffee cup. "Why would you do that?" "Because you need work and they need workers. It is not complicated." "Everything is complicated," she said. "Nothing is ever just simple kindness. There is always an angle, always a price." Zachary's expression grew serious. "I am sorry someone taught you that, but not everyone is out to hurt you. Some people are just trying to get by, same as you. And sometimes helping each other is the only way we survive out here." Before Zara could respond, the front door of the boarding house flew open, and a man stumbled in, reeking of whiskey and unwashed clothes. Her blood turned to ice. Henry Thompson stood in the doorway, his eyes wild and bloodshot, a pistol hanging loose in his hand. "There you are, you ungrateful bitch," he slurred. "Thought you could run off, thought you could embarrass me." Zara stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Get out of here, Pa. You are drunk. Do not tell me what to do." He raised the pistol, waving it vaguely in her direction. "You are coming home. I've got a buyer for the ranch, but he wants to meet you first, wants to see what he is getting as part of the deal." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You sold me." "I sold the ranch. You come with it. That is how things work." Henry's face was twisted with rage and self-pity. "I raised you, fed you, kept a roof over your head. You owe me." Zachary had risen to his feet, positioning himself slightly in front of Zara. "Sir, I think you should leave. You are scaring the other guests." Henry swung the pistol toward him. "Who the hell are you?" "Nobody important. Just a man suggesting you go home and sleep it off. I am not going anywhere without my daughter." Henry's finger tightened on the trigger. "She is mine. Bought and paid for with 23 years of my life. I am not a piece of property." Zara's voice rang out clear and strong. "You have no claim on me. I have worked off any debt I owed you 10 times over. I am done. You are done when I say you are done." Henry lunged forward, but his whiskey-soaked reflexes were too slow. Zachary moved faster, grabbing Henry's wrist and twisting until the pistol clattered to the floor. Henry howled and swung wildly with his other fist, but Zachary ducked and swept his legs out from under him. The older man crashed to the floor, cursing. Miss Hadley had appeared from the kitchen, brandishing a rolling pin. "I have sent for the sheriff. You just hold him there, Zachary." Henry thrashed and yelled, spewing venom at Zara, calling her every vile name he could think of. She stood frozen, listening to the man who was supposed to protect her reduce her to nothing with his words. Some part of her had always believed him, believed she was worthless, damaged, unlovable. His words were just confirming what she had always suspected. Then she felt Zachary's hand on her arm, gentle and grounding. "None of what he is saying is true," he said quietly, his eyes locked on hers. "You know that, right?" She wanted to believe him, wanted to so badly it hurt. But 23 years of poison was hard to wash away. "You do not know me." "I know enough. I know you are strong. I know you survived something that would have broken most people. I know you are trying to build something better for yourself. That takes courage." The sheriff arrived then, a barrel-chested man with a thick mustache and no patience for drunken troublemakers. He hauled Henry to his feet and snapped cuffs on his wrists. "Henry Thompson, you are spending the night in a cell, again." "She is my daughter," Henry screamed as he was dragged toward the door. "You cannot keep her from me." "She is a grown woman who can make her own choices," the sheriff said firmly. "And if I hear you have been bothering her again, I will add harassment charges to the drunk and disorderly." "We clear." Henry's response was another stream of curses that faded as he was pulled out into the street. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Zara became aware that she was shaking, her whole body trembling like a leaf in a storm. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold it together, trying not to fall apart. "Hey," Zachary's voice was soft. "You are safe now. He is gone." "He will come back," she whispered. "He always comes back, and next time he might not be drunk enough to miss." "Then you do not go back. You stay here where people will watch out for you. You take that job at the Carlson Ranch, where there are 30 cowhands who will not let him near you. You build a new life, and you do not let him take up any more space in your head." Zara looked up at him, this stranger who had wandered into her life less than 24 hours ago and had already shown her more kindness than she had known in years. "Why do you care?" Zachary was quiet for a long moment. "When I was 16, my mother was in a situation like yours. My father drank, got mean. She tried to leave half a dozen times, and every time someone talked her into going back, told her it was her duty, her place. Then one night he beat her so bad she did not wake up the next morning. His voice was steady, but there was old pain in his eyes. I wish someone had helped her, really helped her, not just with words but with action. I cannot change what happened to her, but I can make sure it does not happen to someone else if I have any say in it." The raw honesty in his words cracked something open in Zara's chest. She had spent so long assuming everyone had ulterior motives. Everyone wanted something from her. But Zachary was not asking for anything. He was not demanding gratitude or affection or payment. He was just doing what he thought was right because he could. "I am sorry about your mother," she said softly. "Me too." He cleared his throat and the moment passed. "Come on. Let us go talk to Frank Carlson about that job unless you have changed your mind." "No, I need the work." She paused, forcing herself to say the next words. "And thank you for everything." The ride out to the Carlson Ranch took about an hour. Zachary had borrowed a horse for Zara from the livery, a gentle mare with kind eyes. Zara had not ridden in weeks, and her shoulder protested the movement, but it felt good to be on horseback again. The prairie stretched out around them, golden grass rippling in the wind like a vast ocean. The sky was that particular shade of blue that only existed in Kansas, so bright and deep it almost hurt to look at. They did not talk much during the ride. Zachary seemed comfortable with silence, and Zara was too wrapped up in her own thoughts to make conversation. She kept expecting him to bring up her father, to ask questions about her past, to demand explanations. But he just rode beside her, occasionally pointing out landmarks or wildlife, treating her like a person instead of a problem to be solved. The Carlson Ranch was one of the largest operations in the county, sprawling across several thousand acres of prime grazing land. The main house was a solid 2-story structure made of local stone, and the outbuildings were well-maintained and numerous. Cattle dotted the distant hills, and Zara could see several men working in the corrals near the barn. Frank Carlson was a weathered man in his 50s, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He listened as Zachary explained that Zara was looking for work, that she had experience with horses and cattle, that she was a hard worker. Carlson studied her with the same careful attention he probably gave to livestock he was considering buying. "You have worked ranches before?" he asked. "My family's ranch, yes, sir. Thompson Place, about 5 miles southeast of town. I have been running it for the past 5 years." "I know the Thompson Place. Heard your father has been having trouble." Zara lifted her chin. "My father has been having trouble since the day he discovered whiskey, but the ranch stayed afloat because I worked it. I know cattle, horses, and everything in between. I can mend fence, brand calves, break colts, and I am not afraid to get my hands dirty." Something that might have been respect flickered in Carlson's eyes. "I do not usually hire women for ranch work." "Then do not hire me as a woman. Hire me as a worker who can do the job." Carlson barked out a laugh. "Fair enough. I will give you a trial period. 2 weeks. You will bunk with the men in the bunkhouse and you will be expected to pull your weight. If you can keep up, the job is yours at $30 a month plus room and board. Deal?" "Deal." Zara shook his hand firmly, trying not to wince as the motion pulled at her injured shoulder. "You can start tomorrow. Be here at dawn. Zachary will show you where everything is." Carlson tipped his hat and headed back toward the house, already calling out orders to some of the other hands. Zara let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. A job, security, a place to stay that was not her father's house and not dependent on charity. It felt like the first solid ground she had stood on in years. "Thank you," she said to Zachary as they walked their horses toward the barn. "I could not have gotten this without you. You would have figured something out. You are resourceful." He dismounted and held her horse's reins while she swung down. "But I am glad I could help." One of the ranch hands approached, a young man with red hair and a friendly smile. "Zachary. Heard you brought a new recruit. I am Tommy Brennan. Welcome to the outfit, Zara Thompson." She shook his hand, noting the way his gaze lingered on her a moment too long. She had seen that look before, the calculation of a man deciding whether she was worth pursuing. Time to nip that in the bud. "I am here to work, not to make friends. We clear?" Tommy's smile faltered. "Sure, yeah, no problem." He wandered off, and Zara felt a pang of something that might have been regret. There she went again, pushing people away before they could get too close. But it was habit now, armor she wore without thinking. She glanced at Zachary to see if he had noticed, but his expression was neutral. Over the next 2 weeks, Zara threw herself into the work with single-minded determination. She was up before dawn every morning, working until long after sunset. She mucked stalls, mended fences, helped with the branding, and spent hours in the breaking pen with the young horses. Her shoulder ached constantly, but she ignored it. Pain was just a reminder that she was alive, that she had escaped. The other ranch hands kept their distance at first, unsure what to make of a woman in their midst. But Zara proved herself quickly. She could rope as well as any of them, ride better than most, and she did not complain or ask for special treatment. Slowly, grudgingly, they began to accept her presence. All except for one man, a surly character named Dutch who seemed to take personal offense at her existence. He made comments under his breath, left the hardest tasks for her, and generally made her life difficult. Zara ignored him, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. She had dealt with worse than Dutch. Zachary worked in the breaking pen most days, and Zara found herself drawn to watch him whenever she had a spare moment. He had a gift with horses, a patience and understanding that was rare. He never used force or cruelty, just steady, calm persistence. She had never seen anyone handle animals with such care. One evening, about a week into her trial period, she was sitting on the corral fence watching him work with a particularly stubborn bay gelding. The horse was skittish, shying away from any attempt to saddle him. But Zachary just kept talking to him in that low, soothing voice, his movements slow and non-threatening. After nearly an hour, the horse finally let him place the saddle on his back. That was impressive, Zara said as Zachary led the horse out of the pen. He looked up, surprised to see her there. How long have you been watching? A while. I was supposed to be fixing the gate on the south pasture, but I got distracted. She hopped down from the fence. You have a real talent with them. They just need someone to listen. Most horses that act up are scared or hurting or have been treated rough. Once you show them you are not going to hurt them, they settle down. He unsaddled the bay and turned him loose in the corral. People are not that different, I think. Zara felt the words land somewhere deep in her chest. Is that what you think I am? Some scared horse that needs gentling? I think you are someone who has been hurt and is doing her best to make sure it does not happen again, Zachary said simply. Nothing wrong with that. You do not know anything about me. I know you work harder than any two men put together. I know you sleep with a knife under your pillow because I saw it when I helped Miss Hadley change your bandages. I know you have not smiled once since I met you. Not a real smile. I know you push people away the second they get close because you are convinced they are going to leave anyway. Zara's jaw tightened. You are real observant. It is not hard to see when you are paying attention. Zachary leaned against the fence, his expression gentle. For what it is worth, I am not going anywhere. I have no reason to stay, but I am staying anyway, so you can stop waiting for me to disappoint you. The words hung in the air between them, and Zara did not know what to do with them. She had given him every reason to leave. She had been cold, hostile, ungrateful. She had pushed him away at every opportunity, and yet here he was, still present, still steady. It defied everything she thought she knew about people. Why? The question came out smaller than she intended. Zachary was quiet for a long moment, his creek water eyes studying her face. I told you. I do not know, maybe I am just stubborn. Maybe I see something in you worth sticking around for. Does it matter? It always matters. People do not just help for no reason. Then maybe my reason is that I want to. Maybe I like who I am when I am around you. Maybe I think you deserve someone in your corner, no expectations, no strings. Is that enough? Zara did not have an answer for that, so she did what she always did when things got too real, too close. She walked away, but that night, lying in her bunk in the bunkhouse, staring at the ceiling, she found herself replaying the conversation over and over. Zachary's words had burrowed under her skin, planted seeds in places she thought were barren. What if he meant it? What if he really was different? What if she let herself believe, just for a moment, that someone could stay? The thought terrified her more than anything her father had ever done. The next morning, Zara was assigned to help drive a group of cattle to the northern pasture, a task that would take most of the day. It was hot, dusty work, and by midday she was coated in grime and sweat. But there was something satisfying about it, something primal and real. Out here on the prairie, surrounded by the bawling of cattle and the endless sky, she could almost forget the tangle of confusion in her chest. They stopped for lunch near a creek, the hands sprawling in the shade to eat cold biscuits and jerky. Zara sat a little apart from the group, as was her habit. She was just finishing her water when Dutch sauntered over, a mean glint in his eye. You know, Thompson, I have been thinking, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. You work pretty hard for someone who is just here to trap herself a husband. Is that your angle? Figured you could not catch a man in town, so you would come out here where the pickings are slim. Several of the other hands snickered. Zara kept her expression blank. I am here to work, same as you. Sure you are. That is why you are always hanging around Zachary. Saw you watching him yesterday like a lovesick calf. Pathetic, really. Heat rushed to Zara's face, but she forced herself to stay calm. Do not react. Do not give him what he wants. Think whatever you like, Dutch. Your opinion does not concern me. My opinion is that women have no business doing man's work. You are slowing us down, making everything harder. Carlson never should have hired you. Then take it up with Carlson. Zara stood and brushed off her skirt. I am sure he will be real interested in your thoughts on hiring practices. Dutch's face reddened. You got a smart mouth on you, girl. Someone ought to teach you your place. And you think you are the one to do it. Zara let her hand drift toward her boot where her knife was tucked. You are welcome to try. The other hands had gone quiet, watching the exchange. Dutch took a step closer, and Zara could smell the chewing tobacco on his breath. You think you are tough, but you are just a scared little girl playing dress-up. The second things get hard, you will run crying back to town. The only thing that is going to get hard is your day when I report you to Carlson for harassment, Zara said coldly. Now back off before I make you. Dutch opened his mouth to respond, but a voice cut him off. There a problem here. Zachary had ridden up, his horse positioned between Dutch and Zara. His tone was mild, but there was steel underneath. Dutch straightened, suddenly less confident. No problem, just having a conversation. Looked like more than a conversation from where I was sitting. Zachary did not raise his voice, but every man there could hear him clearly. Zara is part of this crew, same as anyone else. She has earned her place here. If you have a problem with that, take it up with me. Dutch glared but backed down. He was bigger than Zachary, but there was something in the younger man's posture that suggested picking a fight would not end well. Whatever. I got work to do. He stalked off, and the other hands quickly dispersed, suddenly very interested in checking their saddles and gear. Zachary dismounted and walked over to Zara. You all right? I did not need you to rescue me, she said, hating how defensive she sounded. I had it handled. I know you did. But that does not mean you have to handle everything alone. He studied her face. Dutch is all bluster. He will not bother you again. Why did you do that? Stick up for me. Because he was wrong, and because no one else was going to say it. Zachary's expression was serious. You have worked twice as hard as anyone here. You have earned respect, not harassment. Someone needed to make that clear. Zara felt something shift inside her, some wall beginning to crack. You keep doing that, helping me when you do not have to. Maybe I want to. Ever think of that? Before she could respond, one of the other hands called out that they needed to get moving if they wanted to make it to the north pasture before dark. Zachary swung back into his saddle, and they spent the rest of the day pushing cattle across the prairie. But Zara found herself stealing glances at him, wondering what it would be like to let someone in, to trust someone enough to let them see past her armor. That night, Frank Carlson called her into his office. Zara went with her stomach in knots, certain that Dutch had complained and she was being let go. But when she entered the small room attached to the barn that served as Carlson's headquarters, the older man was smiling. Sit down, Miss Thompson. I have a proposition for you. Zara sat, her hands folded in her lap. Yes, sir. You have been here 2 weeks and you have impressed me. You work hard, you do not complain, and you are good with the animals. I would like to offer you a permanent position. $30 a month, room and board, and I am putting you in charge of the horse operation. Zachary says you have a good eye for training, and we could use someone dedicated to that full time. What do you say? Relief and pride washed through her in equal measure. I say yes, sir. Thank you. I will not let you down. I do not think you will. Carlson leaned back in his chair. I also wanted to let you know that the sheriff came by this afternoon. Your father has been sentenced to 30 days in jail for drunk and disorderly, and there is a restraining order that says he cannot come within 100 yards of you. After he gets out, if he bothers you again, he will be looking at serious jail time. You should be safe from him now. The news hit her like a physical blow. Safe. She was safe. The man who had terrorized her for so long could not hurt her anymore. She felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes and blinked them away furiously. She did not cry. She had not cried in years. "Thank you for telling me," she managed. "You deserve to know, and Miss Thompson. If you ever need anything, you come to me. I take care of my people. Understand?" "Yes, sir." Zara left the office feeling like she was floating, a permanent job, protection from her father. For the first time in her adult life, she had real security, real safety. It was almost too much to process. She walked out into the warm evening air, breathing deep, letting it sink in. Zachary was sitting on the porch of the bunkhouse, cleaning his saddle. He looked up when she approached. "How did it go?" He offered me a permanent position, in charge of the horses. A slow smile spread across Zachary's face, and Zara realized it was the first time she had seen him truly smile. It transformed his whole face, made him look younger, less weathered. "That is wonderful. Congratulations." "Thank you." She sat down beside him, leaving a careful distance between them. "And thank you for putting in a good word. I know you did. You earned it on your own merit. I just pointed out what was already obvious." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The sky turned gold and pink and orange, colors so vivid they seemed unreal. Zara felt something in her chest loosen, some tight knot of fear and anger beginning to unravel. "Can I ask you something?" She said quietly, "Sure. Do you really not have a reason for helping me? For staying?" Zachary set down the saddle and turned to look at her fully. "I guess I have been thinking about that, and I realize the answer is no, I do not have a reason, at least not one I can explain. I just know that when I met you, something in me recognized something in you, like seeing a reflection. And I thought, maybe she needs what I needed when I was in the dark. Someone to just be there, no questions, no demands, just present. And what if I am not worth all that effort? What if I am just a difficult, damaged person who will never be able to give you anything back? Then you are just a difficult, damaged person, and I am staying anyway. Not because I expect something from you, but because I want to. Because maybe we are both less alone when we are together, even if we are not saying anything, even if we are just existing in the same space. Is that so hard to believe?" Zara looked at him, really looked at him, saw the sincerity in his eyes, the patience in his posture. He meant every word. He was not going to leave. He was not waiting for her to fail so he could say he knew all along. He was just here, steady as the prairie itself. "Yes," she whispered, "it is very hard to believe. Then I will just have to keep proving it until you do." The days turned into weeks, and summer deepened into August's full heat. Zara settled into her new role with a fierce dedication, working with the young horses from dawn until dusk. She had a gift for it, a natural understanding of what each animal needed. Some required firm boundaries, others gentle encouragement. Under her care, even the most skittish colts began to settle and learn. Zachary worked alongside her most days, and slowly, cautiously, they developed a rhythm. They did not talk much, but there was a companionship in the shared work, an understanding that went deeper than words. Zara found herself relaxing around him in increments so small she barely noticed. A smile here, a laugh there. Small moments of ease that felt foreign and wonderful. The other ranch hands had accepted her presence fully now, even Dutch, who kept a careful distance after Zachary's intervention. She was one of them, a working member of the crew. It was a belonging she had never experienced before, and she guarded it carefully. One evening in late August, there was a dance in town to celebrate the end of the harvest season. Most of the hands were planning to go, and there was excited chatter about it during supper. Zara listened quietly, not planning to attend. Dances meant crowds and noise and the possibility of running into people from her old life. Better to stay at the ranch where it was safe. But after the meal, Zachary found her in the barn where she was checking on a mare who was due to foal soon. "You thinking about going to the dance?" "No. Not my kind of thing." "When is the last time you did something just for fun?" Zara thought about it. "I cannot remember." "Then you should come. It might be good for you. Get off the ranch, see other people, let loose a little." "I am not good at letting loose." "Maybe it is time to learn." Zachary's tone was light, but his eyes were serious. "You do not have to be on guard all the time, Zara. It is okay to enjoy yourself." She wanted to argue, but something in her was tired of always saying no, always holding back. "Will you be there?" "I was thinking about it." "Then maybe I will come. For a little while." The dance was held in the town hall, a large wooden building that had been decorated with ribbons and lanterns. Music spilled out into the street, fiddles and a piano playing lively tunes. Inside, it seemed like half the county had turned out, people laughing and dancing and enjoying the rare social occasion. Zara felt out of place immediately. She was wearing her best dress, a simple blue cotton that had been her mother's, but it was plain compared to the other women's finery. She lingered near the doorway, second-guessing her decision to come. Then Zachary appeared at her elbow, looking uncomfortable in a clean shirt and vest. "Want to get some punch?" he offered. They made their way to the refreshment table, and Zara gratefully accepted a cup of sweet, cold punch. The music was loud and bright, couples spinning across the floor in patterns that looked both chaotic and organized. She watched them with a mixture of longing and fear. When was the last time she had danced? Years, certainly, before her mother died. "You dance?" Zachary asked. "I used to. I am probably terrible at it now." "Want to try?" Zara looked at him in surprise. "You want to dance with me? Why not? We are at a dance. Seems like the thing to do." Before she could talk herself out of it, she nodded. Zachary led her onto the floor just as a new song started, something slower and more melodic than the previous reel. He placed one hand lightly on her waist, took her other hand in his, and they began to move. Zara was stiff at first, hyper-aware of his hand on her waist, of how close they were. But Zachary was a steady lead, and gradually she relaxed into it. They swayed and turned with the music, and she realized she had forgotten how good it felt to move like this, to be held gently, to be part of something beautiful. "You are not terrible at this," Zachary said with a small smile. "Neither are you." They danced through 2 more songs, and Zara felt something warm blooming in her chest. This was what normal people did. They went to dances, they laughed with friends, they allowed themselves moments of joy. For so long, she had been focused on survival that she had forgotten there was more to life than just enduring. When the music ended, they made their way outside for some air. The night was cooler, a slight breeze cutting through the lingering heat of the day. They walked slowly down the main street, not talking, just being together. Zara felt a contentment she could not name, a sense that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. "I am glad you came tonight," Zachary said as they neared the edge of town. "Me too. Thank you for convincing me." "You do not have to thank me for everything, you know. Sometimes people just do things because they want to, not because they expect gratitude." Zara stopped walking and turned to face him. The moon was bright overhead, casting silver light across his face. "I do not know how to do this," she admitted. "I do not know how to let someone be kind to me without waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Then do not think about it so hard. Just let it happen. Let yourself have something good for once." She wanted to argue, to list all the reasons why that was impossible, why she did not deserve it. But standing there in the moonlight, looking into Zachary's honest face, the words would not come. Instead, she felt something crack wide open inside her, some dam breaking. And before she could second-guess herself, she stepped forward and kissed him. It was brief, tentative, more question than statement. But when she pulled back, Zachary was looking at her with such warmth, such genuine affection, that she felt tears spring to her eyes. Real tears, not the angry tears of frustration, but the soft tears of relief. "I am terrified," she whispered. "I know." Zachary reached up and gently wiped away a tear with his thumb. "But I am not going anywhere. I am right here, for as long as you want me. What if I do something to ruin it? What if I push you away like I have done with everyone else? Then I will come back. I will keep coming back until you believe that you are worth staying for." Zara let out a shaky breath. "You promise?" "I promise." The autumn came gently to Kansas that year, the fierce heat of summer giving way to cooler days and crisp nights. The prairie grass turned from gold to amber, and the cattle fattened on the last good grazing before winter. Zara threw herself into her work with renewed energy, training the young horses, working alongside Zachary slowly, carefully letting him into her life. It was not easy. There were days when the old fears rose up and she lashed out, picking fights over nothing, trying to drive him away. But true to his word, Zachary stayed. He weathered her storms with the same patience he showed the horses, never retaliating, never abandoning her. Just present, steady, constant. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Zara began to change. The hard edges softened. The walls came down brick by brick. She laughed more, smiled more, allowed herself to hope for things she had never dared hope for before. She made friends among the ranch hands, went to town without fear, even exchanged polite words with Miss Hadley when she visited the boarding house. Her father served his 30 days and was released, but he left town shortly after, headed for Colorado, someone said. Zara did not care where he went as long as it was far from her. That chapter of her life was closed, and she refused to let him take up any more space in her heart. By October, the leaves on the few trees along the creek had turned brilliant red and gold. Zara and Zachary took to riding out there in the evenings after work, just the two of them and the wide prairie. They would sit on the bank and talk about everything and nothing, plans for the future, memories from the past, dreams they had never shared with anyone else. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, Zachary took her hand. "I have been thinking," he said. "About what?" "About us. About what comes next." He turned to look at her, his creek water eyes serious. "I love you, Zara. I think I have loved you since that first day in the alley when you pulled a knife on me and told me to get lost. I love your strength and your stubbornness, and the way you have fought for every good thing in your life. I love who you are and who you are becoming, and I want to spend my life with you if you will have me." Zara's breath caught in her throat. "Zachary, I am not asking you to marry me right this second. I know you need time, need to be sure, but I wanted you to know how I feel. No games, no secrets, just the truth." She looked at him, this man who had wandered into her life and refused to leave, who had seen her at her worst and stayed anyway, who had proven over and over that some people really could be trusted. And she realized that somewhere along the way, she had fallen in love with him too. Not the desperate, clinging love born of loneliness, but something deeper and truer. A love built on respect and partnership and genuine affection. "I love you too," she said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "I did not think I could. I thought I was too broken, too damaged. But you showed me that I was wrong. You showed me that I could be loved just as I am, scars and all. So is that a yes? Someday," Zara smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face. "Yes, someday, when I am ready, when we are both ready." Zachary grinned and pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that made her chest ache. They sat there on the creek bank as the stars came out one by one, holding each other, making quiet promises about the future they would build together. Winter came hard that year, with blizzards that piled snow higher than a man's head and temperatures that made working outside a test of endurance. But the ranch weathered it, and so did Zara and Zachary. They worked side by side through the bitter months, caring for the animals, keeping the operation running. And when they had rare moments of downtime, they would sit by the stove in the bunkhouse, Zara leaning against Zachary's shoulder, content in a way she had never been before. Spring arrived in April with a rush of green and the sound of calves bawling for their mothers. The ranch came alive with activity, and Zara found herself busier than ever. But it was a good busy, purposeful and fulfilling. She had built a life here, carved out a place for herself through sheer will and hard work. And she had found something she never expected: love, real and honest and enduring. One warm evening in May, as they sat on the porch of the bunkhouse watching the sunset, Zachary reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I know we said someday," he said, "but I think someday might be now, if you agree." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small blue stone set in it. It was not fancy or expensive, but it was perfect. Zara felt her eyes fill with tears, the good kind this time, the kind that came from being overwhelmed with happiness. "Is that a yes?" Zachary asked, his voice hopeful. "Yes," Zara laughed through her tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she marveled at how right it felt, how natural. This man who had no reason to stay had become her reason for everything. Together, they had built something beautiful out of broken pieces, proving that sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the town church. Frank Carlson gave Zara away. Miss Hadley cried happy tears, and half the town turned out to celebrate. It was a joyful occasion, full of laughter and music and dancing. Zara wore a new dress of pale yellow, and Zachary could not stop smiling. After the ceremony, as they stood outside the church accepting congratulations, Zara caught sight of a figure at the edge of the crowd. For a moment, her heart clenched with old fear. But it was not her father. It was just a stranger, someone passing through. She realized with a jolt that she was not afraid anymore. That part of her life was truly over, and this new chapter was just beginning. Frank Carlson had given them a small cabin on the edge of the ranch property as a wedding gift, a 2-room structure with a stone fireplace and windows that looked out over the prairie. It was not much, but it was theirs. Their first real home together. That first night in their cabin, lying in bed with Zachary's arm around her, Zara felt a peace she had never known. "I never thought I would have this," she whispered into the darkness. "What? This. A home. A husband who loves me. A future that does not terrify me." Zachary kissed the top of her head. "You deserve all of it and more. You deserve every good thing this world has to offer." "I know that now. You taught me that." "No, I just reminded you of something you forgot. You were always worthy, Zara. You just needed to believe it." They lay in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds outside, the chirp of crickets, the distant call of an owl. Then Zara spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "You know, I gave every man who came into my life a reason to leave. I was difficult, hostile, impossible to please. I made sure they saw the worst of me first. It was protection, I suppose, but you were different. You were the first one who stayed without needing a reason, who just decided I was worth the trouble. You were never trouble. You were just someone who needed time and space to heal. And I had all the time in the world." Zara turned in his arms so she could see his face in the moonlight streaming through the window. "What did I do to deserve you? You existed. That was enough." She kissed him then, deep and slow, pouring all her gratitude and love and hope into it. And she knew, with a certainty that went bone deep, that this was what she had been searching for all along. Not someone to save her, not someone to fix her, but someone to stand beside her while she saved herself. Someone to believe in her when she could not believe in herself. Someone to stay. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. Zara and Zachary worked the ranch together, building a reputation for training the finest horses in 3 counties. They saved their money, made improvements to the cabin, added rooms as their family grew. Their first child, a daughter, was born in the spring of 1880. They named her Margaret after Zachary's mother, but called her Maggie. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's creek water eyes, and from the moment she arrived, she wrapped them both around her tiny finger. Zara discovered depths of love she had not known existed, a fierce protective instinct that made her understand her own mother better, made her grieve for what had been lost. But she did not dwell in the past. She was too busy building the future. Maggie was joined 2 years later by a son they named Jacob, a sturdy boy with a sunny disposition and his father's patience. And then another daughter, Rose, who arrived in the summer of 1884 with lungs that could wake the entire county. The cabin expanded to accommodate the growing family. Rooms added on, a larger kitchen, a porch where they could sit on warm evenings and watch the children play. Frank Carlson had made Zachary foreman of the ranch, and Zara continued to run the horse operation, teaching her children to ride as soon as they could walk. Life was full and chaotic and wonderful in ways Zara had never imagined possible. There were hard times too, years when the drought came and the cattle suffered, winters when sickness swept through the county, moments when money was tight and worry kept them up at night. But they faced it all together, Zachary and Zara, partners in every sense of the word. On their 10th anniversary, Zachary took Zara back to the creek where he had first told her he loved her. The children were spending the day with Miss Hadley in town, giving them a rare afternoon alone. They sat on the bank, just as they had all those years ago, watching the water flow past. "Do you ever regret it?" Zara asked. "Taking a chance on me?" Zachary looked at her in surprise. "Not for a single second. Why would you ask that?" "Because I know I was not easy. I am still not easy. I still have days when the old fears come back, when I push you away without meaning to. And I still stay, because that is what love is, not the fairy tale version where everything is perfect and easy. The real version where you choose each other every day, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days." Zara leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am so grateful for you, for us. For the life we have built, me too." Zachary wrapped his arm around her. "You know, I was thinking about that first day we met. You pulled a knife on me and told me to get lost. I was terrified. I know. But even then, even at your most defensive, I could see the strength in you. The will to survive, to fight for something better. That is what I fell in love with first, not despite your difficulties, but because of them, because they showed me who you really were underneath all the armor. And who was I? Someone brave. Someone who refused to give up even when everything was stacked against her. Someone who deserved a chance at happiness." Tears pricked at Zara's eyes. Even after all these years, Zachary could still make her cry with his words, his unwavering belief in her. "I love you so much. I love you too. Always have, always will." They sat there until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose and violet. Then they rode back to the ranch, back to their cabin and their children and their life. It was not a perfect life, but it was theirs, built from nothing, built from choices and sacrifices and stubborn love. As the years passed, the children grew. Maggie became a skilled rider, helping her mother train horses. Jacob developed his father's way with animals, patient and understanding. Rose, the youngest, had a sharp mind and a sharper tongue. reminding Zara painfully of herself. But she also had a huge heart, constantly bringing home injured animals to nurse back to health. Zara watched her children grow with a mixture of pride and bittersweet awareness of time passing. She taught them everything she knew about horses, about hard work, about resilience. But more importantly, she taught them about love, about the importance of staying when things got hard, about choosing people and sticking by them. Zachary taught them too, through example more than words. He showed them how to be patient, how to be kind, how to see the best in people even when they made it difficult. The children adored him, and Zara often caught herself watching him with them, her heart so full it ached. By the time they celebrated their 20th anniversary in 1898, they were established pillars of the community. The ranch prospered, their children thrived, and they had built something lasting. Zara, now 43, had soft lines around her eyes from years of smiling, and her dark hair was threaded with silver. Zachary, at 46, was weathered by sun and work, but his creek water eyes were as warm as ever. They threw a party at the ranch to celebrate, inviting everyone they knew. The yard was filled with people, music, laughter. As Zara stood on the porch watching her friends and family enjoy themselves, she felt Zachary's arm slip around her waist. "Happy anniversary," he murmured. "Happy anniversary." She turned to kiss him, not caring who saw. 20 years. "I cannot believe it has been 20 years. Best 20 years of my life, even when I was impossible, especially then. You keep life interesting." Maggie appeared then, now a young woman of 18 with her own beau from a neighboring ranch. "Mama, Papa, everyone wants you to make a speech." Zara and Zachary exchanged glances. Public speaking was not their strength, but they made their way to the center of the yard and the crowd quieted. "We just want to thank all of you for being here," Zachary began. "For celebrating with us, for being part of our lives. This community has been so good to us and we are grateful." Zara took a breath, then found her voice. "When I was young, I thought I would always be alone. I thought I was too broken, too difficult for anyone to love, but I was wrong. I learned that being loved is not about being perfect. It is about being seen, truly seen and accepted anyway. Zachary taught me that. He stayed when I gave him every reason to leave, and he showed me that I was worth staying for." She looked at her husband, at the man who had changed her life. "I gave every man a reason to leave. But you were the first one who stayed without needing a reason, and that made all the difference. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for this life. Thank you for everything." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Zachary pulled her close and kissed her, and for a moment the world fell away. It was just the two of them, just like it had been that first day in the alley, when he had offered help to a wounded stranger and she had pulled a knife on him. Who would have thought that knife-wielding stranger would become his wife, the mother of his children, the love of his life? Who would have thought the cowboy passing through town would become her anchor, her safe harbor, her home? But that was the beautiful mystery of love. It found you when you least expected it, in forms you never anticipated. And if you were brave enough to let it in, if you were willing to take the risk, it could transform everything. As the party continued around them, Zara and Zachary danced under the stars, just as they had done at that first dance in town 20 years ago. Their children watched with affectionate embarrassment, their friends smiled knowingly, and the prairie wind whispered through the grass like a blessing. "You remember what you said to me that night?" Zara asked as they swayed to the music. "That night we first danced, I said a lot of things. You said I deserved someone in my corner, no expectations, no strings. You said maybe your reason for helping me was that you wanted to. I meant it. I know. And that is what made me start to believe. Not in you necessarily, but in the possibility that someone could care without needing something in return. You gave me that gift. And you gave me a reason to stay in one place. Before you, I was always moving, always looking for the next thing. But you made me want to put down roots to build something lasting. You gave me a home, Zara, not just a place but a feeling, a sense of belonging I had never had before. Zara felt tears on her cheeks, but they were good tears, happy tears. We are both lucky then. We are both blessed. The music played on and they danced, and the years ahead stretched out full of promise. There would be more challenges, more hardships. Life in Kansas in the turn of the century was not easy, but they would face it together, just as they had faced everything else. More years passed. Maggie married her beau and moved to a ranch of her own, but close enough to visit often. Jacob took over more responsibilities on the ranch, working alongside his father. Rose, brilliant and determined, shocked everyone by deciding to attend teachers' college in the East, becoming one of the first women in the family to pursue higher education. Zara and Zachary became grandparents, welcoming Maggie's children with the same joy they had felt at the birth of their own. They grew older, their bodies showing the wear of decades of hard work, but their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened, tempered by time and trials into something unbreakable. On quiet evenings, they would sit on the porch of their cabin, watching the sun set over the prairie they both loved so much. Zara would lean against Zachary, his arm around her shoulders, and they would talk about the day, about the grandchildren, about nothing and everything. "Do you ever think about that day in the alley?" Zara asked one evening when she was 65 and Zachary 68. "When you first found me, sometimes. I think about how close you came to bleeding out, to running off before I could help. I think about all the ways it could have gone differently. But it did not. You stayed, and everything changed. Everything changed because you let me stay. Because you were brave enough to take a chance on someone when every instinct told you to run. That took more courage than anything I did." Zara smiled. "I suppose we both took chances on each other. Best gamble I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. The prairie stretched endlessly around them, the same prairie where they had built their life, raised their family, grown old together. It was home in every sense of the word, made sacred by years of love and labor. "I have been thinking," Zara said softly, "about what I would tell my younger self if I could, that girl who thought she was unlovable, who pushed everyone away. What would you tell her? That she was wrong. That she deserved love just as much as anyone else. That the right person would not need a reason to stay, they would just stay. And that letting someone in, even when it scared her, would be the best decision she ever made." Zachary squeezed her shoulder gently. "I think she figured it out eventually, only because you refused to give up on me. I could never give up on you. Not then, not now, not ever." Zara turned to look at him, at this man who had been her constant for so many years. His face was deeply lined now, his hair completely silver, but his eyes were the same creek water color they had always been, still warm, still kind, still full of love. "I hope we have more years together," she said. "Many more. We will have as many as we are given. And I will treasure every single one." They kissed, slow and sweet, and then sat together until the moon rose high and bright. They had built a good life, a full life. A life that started with a wounded woman and a cowboy who chose to stay. A life that proved love was not about perfection or ease, but about commitment and choice and showing up, day after day, year after year. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the scent of wild flowers and earth and home. And in their little cabin, surrounded by memories and love and the life they had built, Zara and Zachary Reeves held each other close and thanked the stars for every moment they had been given. Years later, when their children gathered to celebrate their 50th anniversary, Zara stood before her family, her voice steady despite her 80 years. Zachary sat beside her, his hand in hers, their fingers intertwined as they had been for half a century. "I want you all to know something," she said, looking at her children, her grandchildren, even her great-grandchildren. "I want you to know that love is not always easy. Sometimes it is hard. Sometimes it means trusting when every instinct tells you not to. Sometimes it means staying when leaving would be simpler. But real love, the kind that lasts, is worth every moment of fear, every risk you take." She looked at Zachary, her eyes shining. "Your grandfather taught me that. He showed me what it means to love someone without conditions, without expectations. He stayed when I gave him every reason to leave. And in doing so, he gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me, the knowledge that I was worthy of love just as I was." Maggie wiped tears from her eyes. Jacob cleared his throat roughly. Rose, always the most outspoken, called out, "Tell us the story again, Mama, how you met." So Zara told them, as she had told them many times before. The story of a desperate woman running from her past, and a cowboy who happened to be in the right place at the right time. The story of a bullet wound and an alley, of bandages and kindness, of walls slowly coming down. The story of a love that started with no reason and became the reason for everything. When she finished, there was not a dry eye in the room. Zachary stood slowly, his joints protesting, and raised his glass. "To my wife," he said, his voice still strong despite his age. "The bravest person I have ever known. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for this life. Thank you for every single day." "To Mama and Papa," the family chorused, raising their glasses. As the celebration continued around them, Zara and Zachary slipped outside, needing a moment alone. The prairie stretched out before them, bathed in moonlight, as timeless and enduring as their love. They stood side by side, hands clasped, looking out over the land they had worked and loved for so many years. 50 years, Zachary said softly. "Feels like both a lifetime and no time at all." "I know what you mean." Zara leaned her head on his shoulder. "If I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a single thing. Not even the hard parts, especially not the hard parts. They made us who we are. They taught us what we were capable of. They showed us that love is not about avoiding difficulties, but about facing them together." Zachary kissed the top of her head. "Wise words from a wise woman. I learned from the best." They stood there in the peaceful darkness, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful. Their love story was not the stuff of fairy tales, with grand gestures and dramatic rescues. It was quieter than that, more real. It was about choosing each other every day. About staying when things got hard. About believing in each other when belief was difficult. It was about a woman who had given every man a reason to leave, and a cowboy who was the first one to stay without needing a reason. And in that staying, in that simple act of presence and commitment, they had found something more precious than gold, more lasting than the prairie itself. They had found love. Real, honest, enduring love. The kind that weathered storms and celebrated sunshine. The kind that grew deeper with time, not shallower. The kind that transformed two broken people into one strong, united whole. As they stood together under the stars, surrounded by the family they had created and the life they had built, Zara Thompson Reeves knew that she was the luckiest woman alive. Not because everything had been easy, but because she had found someone who made the hard things worthwhile. Someone who had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. Someone who had stayed. And Zachary Reeves, holding his wife close, knew he was the luckiest man alive. Not because he had saved her, but because she had saved herself and let him be part of her journey. because she had trusted him with her heart, her life, her everything. Because she had chosen him day after day, year after year for 50 beautiful years. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying their love story across the prairie, a testament to the power of staying, the beauty of commitment, and the transformative magic of choosing to love even when it would be easier not to. Their story would live on in their children and grandchildren, in the land they had worked, in the life they had built together. It was a story that began with pain and fear, but ended with joy and peace. A story that proved love was not about perfection, but about persistence. Not about having no reason to leave, but about having every reason to stay. And as the moon rose higher in the Kansas sky, casting silver light over the prairie, over the ranch, over two people who had spent a lifetime loving each other, it blessed them with its gentle glow, acknowledging that they had done something rare and precious. They had built a love that lasted, a love that endured, a love that would echo through the generations to come. She had given every man a reason to leave. He was the first one who stayed without a reason. And together, they had created a lifetime of reasons to be grateful, to love, to cherish every precious moment they had been given. Together, they had found home.